Did three-time Tony winner and beloved Broadway diva Patti LuPone just quit the industry because of drama happening at Hadestown last week and announce it in a tweet? No. But also, kind of yes. We're going to talk about this unfolding drama. If you have no idea what's going on, stay tuned. Oh my god, hey! Welcome back to my Stager YouTube channel. If you are meeting me for the first time, hello! My name is Mickey Joe and I am obsessed with all things theatre. I'm an independent theatre critic and pundit and content creator based here in the UK. And this is my Stager YouTube channel where I review the shows that I have been to see, and I also talk about news and drama happening in the theatre industry worldwide, which right now is causing me to talk a lot about Broadway. Guys, you need to calm down. Oh my gosh. This is 2 Broadway drama videos in a row. Are you kidding me? Here I am just trying to talk about the cute little musicals I've been to see in the UK, and New York is losing its entire mind. So this is a story that's been unfolding for like a week now, and I wasn't sure what I really wanted to say about the original drama because a lot of the dialogue about it has become incredibly toxic, and we're going to address all of this today. I am going to talk about it, but then something happened that made it impossible for me not to talk about it because Patti LuPone has entered the chat and then subsequently absolutely left the chat. If Patti being on Twitter was the best thing to ever happen to Broadway, then this week may have been one of the worst. To cut a long story very short, Patti LuPone announced in a tweet yesterday that she had given up her equity card and Broadway had issues that it needed to sort out. Now, it is not 100% clear what this is about because Twitter lacks nuance, but it seems as though it's referring to a lot of drama that's been unfolding over the past week to do with Hadestown, that on the face of it did not involve LuPone directly, but she has been implicated in it. So let's go back to the very beginning. Now, before I get into all of this, if you enjoyed today's video, please make sure to subscribe to my Stager YouTube channel. I make content like this all the time. I recap all of the drama and gossip happening in the theatre world worldwide, and I talk about musicals. If that's the kind of thing that you would like, make sure you're subscribed. And tell your friends, you know, Patti LuPone has left Broadway. They need to know about it. And if they don't know who that is, then you need new friends. Also, if you really enjoyed today's video, feel free to use the super thanks button down below to give me a little stagey tip. I would really appreciate that as a content creator. It makes a big difference to the kind of videos I'm able to make. Today's video is sponsored by Atlas VPN, and if you've been following any of the stories that I am talking about in today's video, you probably spend a lot of time on the internet, just like me, and you could absolutely invest in software like this. Atlas VPN has been developed by top cybersecurity specialists and IT engineers to make the internet accessible and safe for everyone, and currently has more than 6 million users worldwide. If you don't know what a VPN is, this is software for your computer that lets you unlock location-specific content. So if, as a random example, you were someone living in London who didn't have access to the Heathers Pro Shot yet, then hypothetically you could use a VPN to be able to watch that from your current location. Now, I'm not suggesting or endorsing that behavior, but it's absolutely something you could do. It also keeps your Google searches private, so you don't have to feel embarrassed about how many different Patti LuPone bootlegs you have searched for in the past month. But it's also more than just a VPN. It blocks malicious links, ads, and trackers, and notifies you when someone is trying to steal your data. So when it comes to cybersecurity attacks, it's your savior! That was an Evita reference, if anyone missed that one. So click on the link in the description to take advantage of the huge discount that Atlas VPN is running right now, meaning you can get a 3-year subscription for just $1.99 a month, with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Time's running out on this limited time offer, so make sure you get it quick. Now let's talk about Patti LuPone. So if we go all the way back to 2009, Patti LuPone is starring as Mama Rose in Gypsy, in a big revival on Broadway that would earn her the second of her now 3 Tony Awards. She's giving an acclaimed performance, and the New York gays and the Sondheim lovers are turning out in force to go and see her in the show. And her performance in Gypsy has become quite legendary, and I feel like for the younger generation of theatregoers, this is the role she's most synonymous with. Older theatregoers who remember her in Evita will probably say Evita, but I think for the current generation, Gypsy is the one that's most inextricably linked to at least the public perception of her diva demeanour, whether that is a true reflection of her as an individual, I don't know, but certainly the concept of Patti LuPone feels very close to Mama Rose and Gypsy. And a lot of this has to do with something that happened at her penultimate performance. So the night before closing, Patti is performing the last number in the show, Rose's Turn. It's a huge, huge number, and she stops the show mid-song to yell at somebody in the audience to say, "Stop taking pictures." You heard the announcement at the beginning of the show, you heard the announcement at intermission, and she orders for them to be chucked out of the theatre. She yells, "Who do you think you are?" She goes on to thank the rest of the audience. She gets rapturous applause. And for years afterwards, the audio recording of this clip, which hilariously is being done by somebody else in the audience who is smartly bootlegging the penultimate performance of LuPone and Gypsy, because you know that they did. That recording earns her an awful lot of capital. People really celebrate the fact that she did that, and she becomes synonymous with the war against mobile devices and cameras in theatres. Now, whatever your perspective is on bootlegging, I know that the modern generation of theatregoer talking about theatre accessibility has a very different take on bootlegging performances and electronic devices being allowed into auditoriums. I am still of the position that it is distracting, and fundamentally it's without the consent of the performers. That's my biggest issue with bootlegging. It's not even the fact that it's distracting, it's the fact that you are filming someone without their consent at their place of work. And I feel like just because they're actors and we treat them differently, we've stopped remembering that that's not an okay thing to do. But for the last 10 years, almost every time that someone has talked about phones in a theatre, they have talked about LuPone. And this has happened subsequently. She was performing in a play off Broadway where an audience member was on their phone, and as she was crossing to leave the stage, she swiped it out of their hands and took it backstage with her. Now, if you think this happening at the second to last performance of her run in the show seems suspicious or particularly coincidental, you will find out why that is, because there is more to this story than people have been aware of for the last 13 years. But for now, we're going to fast forward to last week at Hadestown. So at Hadestown last week, an audience member posted on social media after having seen the show that they were yelled at multiple times by a member of the cast for allegedly using their mobile phone, which it transpired was actually a captioning device because the audience member was hard of hearing. The story then subsequently blew up on social media with a lot of different takes. People were outraged that this had happened, and it led to a very important and very necessary conversation about accessibility for disabled patrons at a theatre. Because this is something that the front of house knew about, this is something the cast definitely should have been made aware of, but in any case, it is leading towards the idea that it is not the cast's responsibility to police this behaviour from the stage. Now that's reliant on a few things. It's reliant on front of house doing their job properly, it's reliant on ushers doing their job properly, because I've been in theatre auditoria where ushers have been really on it and they've been great at stopping people filming, and I have been in other theatres where they haven't been. And there are various theatre layouts where it's really hard, where you have these long, long rows and these deep sections and no central aisle, and an usher cannot get to someone right in the middle of the stalls in the most expensive seats, usually, privilege, who is filming the show. All they can do is shine a torch on their face from the end of the row, and they end up distracting all the people who are sat there not bootlegging the show. So it's difficult. The whole thing is a difficult situation, and it relies on mutual respect between the cast and the audience. But another part of that mutual respect is that it was wrong for this performer to lambast the audience member. Were they spurred on by the legend of Patti LuPone and by the public praise of LuPone having done that? Were they expecting all of the backlash that would follow? I doubt it. So the performer is Lillias White, beloved Lillias White, who has recently taken over as Hermes in Hadestown to tremendous audience acclaim. Lillias is very well liked on Broadway, but with this latest revelation has endured an enormous backlash, and unfortunately a horrible, awful, unforgivable racist backlash. A fan page dedicated to Lillias on Instagram has received an enormity of ugly racist comments. Lillias is being accused of ableism, which simply isn't true, because for Lillias to have been ableist, she would have to have been knowing of what was happening in that situation. Lillias was unaware that the device was a captioning device, whether she hadn't been made aware of it, whether she had forgotten. I think the whole thing was an unfortunate situation. I don't agree with the calls that she should be fired. I'm sorry, but I don't. I know that people have been fired for less. I appreciate that. But I do think putting someone in an embarrassing and uncomfortable position like that, just because they are a disabled theatregoer, is not grounds for dismissal. I think a lot of that actually has to do with the way that we infantilize disabled people and feel like they're these little babies that need to be protected, and how dare you yell at them, you must be fired, because that's a horrible thing to do. Horrible implies malice, and there was no malice here. There was simply frustration. The whole situation was avoidable and frustrating, and it's horrible that this happened to this theatre goer. I am really cognizant of how humiliating and awful that must have been, and how othering it must be for an already difficult situation to already be trying to do this thing, going to a Broadway show in a situation that is so clearly not built for you. To have that happen must be anxiety inducing, and I imagine it will be difficult for this particular audience member to return to another Broadway show, which is a shame, which is a terrible shame. I think more so than anything else, and this audience member has acknowledged this in their social media posts, this is an opportunity for learning and education and for improved inclusion and accessibility. So that is my take on the entire Hadestown situation, but how does this relate to Patti LuPone? Well, people were not ignorant of the comparison between the two. And while Lilias was having this backlash and they were calling for her to be fired, people were saying, well, when Patti LuPone did it, everyone was thrilled. Why is Lilias now having this backlash? More to the point, they were saying, why did people celebrate Patti LuPone's behaviour? Looking at it now through a more modern lens, lambasting someone from the stage is perhaps not something that we ought to be celebrating. And this has really divided people on whether or not it was the right thing to do in each case, because there are differences between the two. However, it has subsequently come to light, and this was not particularly a secret over the last decade, it's just not something that people were super aware of. If we go back to the Patti LuPone story, like I told you, there is a detail that we have not been talking about. So the audience member who was taking pictures was a hired photographer on assignment who had been employed to photograph Patti LuPone's last performance in Gypsy. One of my very good friends over here in the UK is a brilliant West End theatre photographer, shout out to Danny with a camera, and he will often go and see a show and sort of practice and trial run it before taking official photographs, because it's a high stress, high pressure environment to photograph something during a live show. You want to make sure beforehand you know what the angles are, you know what shots you're trying to get, you know where in the theatre you need to be, you know what the lighting is going to be like. There's a lot of factors that you need to know about, so it absolutely makes sense for him to have been at the show before the one he needed to photograph in order to practice. So this whole time, Patti was never yelling at a rogue audience member who was illegally taking pictures. Patti was yelling at a photographer that she knew about but had forgotten about. And she allegedly found out that same night and apologised, but hasn't been super forthcoming with that side of the story over the subsequent years. Now, I have seen people talking about that and drawing that comparison. I haven't seen an enormous amount of animosity towards Patti LuPone. I haven't seen anyone calling for anything to happen to her, because again, it was another honest mistake, but it did bring to light that we shouldn't necessarily have been celebrating this diva power move. But Patti evidently has not taken this well, because she tweeted, and I'm going to read you the exact tweet, "Quite a week on Broadway, seeing my name being bandied about. Gave up my equity card, no longer part of that circus. Figure it out." The tweet has been liked 11,500 times. Patti has 116,000 followers on Twitter and follows no one, which is a power move that I respect. So the implication of this is that Patti has seen her name being invoked in this Hadestown debate with some level of criticism, with a very light level of criticism, and people being like, well, why was it okay for Patti LuPone? And that seems enough for Patti LuPone to throw her hands in the air to say, this is a mess, you'll need to figure it out, this is a circus, I'm not part of it. And to an extent, she's right. This is not really about her, this current unfolding situation. Her stuff is very much in the past. If anything, I feel like what ought to be criticised more is how the public responded to Patti LuPone's behaviour in this moment, and how we kind of deified and glorified this. But I also don't think it's up to the court of public opinion to resolve these things. This is why we have stage managers. This is why we have producers and creative teams on shows to oversee these kind of situations. It is not for us, the public, to decide whether Patti LuPone's behaviour is acceptable, nor whether Lilias White should be fired. But then we could have a wider conversation about the importance of accountability and the blind spots of cancel culture, which I'm not about to do here. I do think Patti may be overreacting to this just a little bit, but I do want to clarify something I think is being misinterpreted, because a lot of people are reading into this tweet as this has made her quit Broadway. Now, Patti had probably already quit Broadway. A few years ago, after she starred in the musical War Paint on Broadway opposite Christine Ebersole, she gave interviews stating that this was going to be her last ever musical. She was subsequently coaxed out of retirement by the British director Marianne Elliott to star as Joanne in the London revival of Company that subsequently transferred back to Broadway and won her third and possibly final Tony Award. Now, the only reason that she agreed to do this, having already played Joanne in the past, was to work with a female director on a musical, and she spoke about the importance of women in positions of power within creative teams. So Patti has retired from Broadway before. And she's at an age where she may not want to do an 8-show-a-week schedule. Everything I've seen about her in her dressing room at the Gielgud Theatre, where Company was playing here in London, was her in her bed. She was constantly having naps backstage and lying down, and she did not do much in the show. She sat in a chair, she carried a chair, she sang Rise with her trademark brassy vibrato. Brassy vibrato, that's hard to say. But certainly I think the way that Patti performs and the intensity and the panache and the power with which she performs is probably difficult for her to sustain at her age 8 times a week. So there are definitely other factors that were already involved with her bowing out of Broadway. Now, the way I read this tweet, if you pay very close attention to the tense, quite a week on Broadway, seeing my name being bandied about, gave up my equity card. Now, that's in the past. I'm reading that as, I have already given up my equity card, no longer part of that circus. That's her saying, this has nothing to do with me because I'm no longer on Broadway. I have already done that prior to this happening. Figure it out. Now, I'm not sure what we're meant to be figuring out here, but I'm nervous about it because Patti LuPone's told us to figure something out. So I guess we need to sit down and figure something out, you guys, because when Patti LuPone tells you to do something, I, for one, listen. But in any case, I don't think this is because of this Hadestown drama. It is how she's revealing it, which arguably, for something she seems to want to separate herself from, is kind of centering her in this narrative. I mean, look at how I'm now talking about this whole thing in this video. This has no longer become what happened at Hadestown. Let's talk about ableism. Let's talk about accessibility. The news has overtaken that, and it has become, why did Patti LuPone quit Broadway? Is she, as an able-bodied white woman, centering herself in this situation and in this narrative that has previously been about a black performer and a disabled theatregoer? If we weren't talking about LuPone before, we definitely are now. And for what? She hasn't been receiving death threats. Her name has been brought up in conversation, and there have been parallels drawn between that situation and this one. Potentially she finds it embarrassing that now more people know the realities of what happened back in 2009, and rather than address that, she has simply told us that she has quit Broadway. Are there other factors at play here? Because she's not saying she's never going to perform on Broadway again, she's implying it, but she's given up her equity card, which means she is no longer paying union dues. Now, we know that she is working on various TV projects at the moment. She is about to be part of the upcoming series of American Horror Story in New York. She's done a lot of shows with Ryan Murphy. And as long as she continues to be available, Ryan Murphy is going to keep her in business. So he is a great person for her to be working with. But while she was doing all of that, she wasn't going to be performing on Broadway anyway. There's nothing to stop her keeping her equity card and just deciding to say no anytime she is offered a Broadway show. But instead, she is choosing to renounce her union membership at a very trying financial time for Broadway. And I think that has an interesting implication as well. She so doesn't want to be involved that she is removing herself entirely from support for the institution. So there definitely seems to be some animosity there. Patti LuPone is mad at Broadway. Or it was this ceremonial thing that she felt like she had to do. Until she gives a more thorough interview, and I hope people are approaching her for those, we're not necessarily going to know exactly what motivated this decision. But definitely people have strong feelings about it. I mean, Patti is beloved. She's given these great performances over the years on Broadway, over here in London. I'm lucky enough to have seen her in company as well as privately in concert at the Leicester Square Theatre. She signed my Sondheim lyric book. She has this magnetism and she has this formidable talent. And as much as she doesn't want to, she has this fascinating public persona that she can't seem to outrun. She's spoken before in interviews about the idea of Patti LuPone and people's perception of her and the character she played on Glee when she was hired to play Patti LuPone as a cameo on Glee. And she said she was playing Patti LuPone or whoever she is. But I do also think over such a long career where we have seen this many glimpses into her personality, a certain amount of it has to be true. But I don't know. I don't know her personally. Possibly there are people that do who can illuminate down in the comments section. So this is the time for you to let me know what you think about this. What do you think about the Hadestown situation separately? What do you think about Patti LuPone giving up her equity card? Are there any other factors involved in this? Any other reasons that you can think of that I have maybe missed? Let us know down in the comments section and we will try and piece this together. And we'll try and sort it out because Patti told us to. So, you know, we got to work on that, guys. In the meantime, Broadway, I need you to calm down and stop being dramatic because my gosh, the past week has been an awful lot. It has been incredibly messy on social media. People have been giving all of these hot takes in tweets and TikToks, and there's been such a lack of nuance and context in this debate, which is why I've been waiting to really articulate my points clearly. Hopefully I have done that in this video, and hopefully this gave you a little bit more insight into what has happened. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope it was educational. I hope it helped you work out what was going on. If you did enjoy it, make sure to subscribe to my Stagey YouTube channel. Like I said, I make content like this all of the time, and hopefully you'll like that just as much. Also, you can use the super thanks button down below to give me a Stagey tip as a content creator. That would really help me. You can also go to patreon.com/MickeyJoeTheatre where you can gain access to some exclusive photo and video content. Don't forget you can click the link in the description down below to take advantage of the huge discount that Atlas VPN is running right now, meaning you can get a 3-year subscription for just $1.99 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Time's running out, so get your deal by clicking the link in the video description down below. I hope that everybody's staying safe and that you have a stagey day. For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh my god, hey. Thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!